Hello, this is just going to be a quick tutorial for the GnarBike Trials 2 level builder. So to start, get into the builder, we're going to just select the little build button there and then create a new level. What we need firstly is some objects. So on the left panel here you've got your categories, and so if you click on any of these are metal beams, these are checkpoints and finish lines. You can find objects. So if we jump into these large objects, and we're going to create our first object. So to do that, you tap on one of the objects you want and just drag it into the scene. So here you go, we've got a container, and so you can put that down there. And if I want another one, get a blue one here, I'll put that in too. So now I'm going to talk about how we can move the objects. So the very basics is you just you select the object and you can drag it around. We've also got a few little extra tools here. So there's snap to grid. This makes the objects snap to a grid, so it's easier to stack them and get them aligned. We've also got snap to object. So when there's no other object around, this is just like normal drag and drop. But when there is another object, you can drag that over and it will snap right to it. So if we get a plank or something, this becomes more obvious. So we've got our little planks here, and then we'll get another one, and boom, they snap right to each other. So the other tool we have when it comes to movement is up here we've got the axes that it will move on. So for example, at the moment we're moving in the X and Y, and now if we turn off the X, that's like left to right. So now we can only move up and down. I'm just going to turn off this magnet right now. So now this object can only be moved up and down. We can't do that, so we can put it back on. We could also move it out of the ride line by turning on the Z axis. So now you can put it further in the background or in the foreground. The little yellow line shows where the rider will be. To make it easier to see what you're doing when you are moving around, we've got this button down here. Now this will switch the camera. When you switch the camera, it automatically puts you into X and Z mode. So now we can move the objects around, and this is great for placing scenery or doing more 3D style objects. So the next thing we probably want to do is, because right now you won't be able to get up onto these containers, so we want to make a ramp. Now these blanks would be great for that, except for the fact they're the wrong rotation. So to rotate an object, you come up here and you can hit rotate object, and then you just drag it up and down to rotate the object. And you can also select the axis you want to rotate in. This is local to the object, so you can, the little green, red or blue circle will show you the way it will end up rotating. You can also undo rotations as well with this button down here, along with movements. So if we do this, there you go, see it go back to where it was. Now there is also another way of rotating. Now when you're on a mobile, when you're on your device and you have this selected with one finger, you can place down another finger. Obviously I'm on a computer at the moment, but this is how it will work. So you can place down a secondary finger, and you can drag that up and down, and that will rotate the object you're currently holding. And you can also drag your finger to the left or the right to move the object away, out from underneath your finger, and this makes it a lot easier to see what you're doing. So if we just place these two planks like this, like a little ramp, then you can, now to test the level, you come down here and you click this big checkered flags icon, and then it jumps straight into play mode, and then you can just immediately test. There you go. If you I'll hit and it will reset you back to the start. You also have these two skip buttons, and these will come more useful later on, and they allow you to skip between checkpoints when you're building a level. Also, if you crash, you do have unlimited rewinds in build mode, so you can just keep practicing and work out the best lines. So now to get back to build mode, we can just click up here. Now we're back in build mode. We leave the bike where you are, so that can be quite useful for when you're trying to work out the end of a jump or something, where to put the landing. You can then find where the bike was. Okay, so next, some other useful tools we have. So say you want to move this whole obstacle, it's a bit close to the start line, but you don't want to move each object individually. You can select this multi-select icon, and that will allow you to select all these objects. Then turn that off again, and now all these objects are can be moved together, you see. If we then select a different object, you'll see that we've now unselected these objects and they're individual objects again. Now, another way we can do multi-selecting is with the selection box. You just drag that around them, and there you have it. They're all selected again. But once again, if we click on this object, they're now deselected. So you're now moving each one individually. Now, if we want another tool we have is grouping. So if we select all these objects again, we can then hit this button on the right here, which is our group icon. Now these objects have basically been turned into one object. So if we deselect them by clicking something else and reselect them, they're still all one object. This is really useful because it means we can now duplicate this entire obstacle by hitting this button down here, which is the duplicate button. So now there's two of them in the same position. The reason we put it in the exact same position is so you can line things up nice and easily. So if we wanted, say, this to be exactly on top, we can turn off the X movement, and then this object, the duplication, can be straight on top. Obviously, this obstacle doesn't need that, but sometimes that can become useful. So we'll put that back onto X and Y and move it just a bit further forward. Obviously we've got this little plank here now in the way, so if you select that, you can hit the rubbish can and it will delete it. And let's give this a quick test again. There you go, jumped over the first one and the second one. Boom. So now I'm going to talk about some of the more complicated aspects, which is our physics system. So I'll just get rid of this obstacle. So say you wanted to make something the rider could knock over. So if we get this plank and we rotate it, so it's on its end. Now that's a wall. Now we won't be able to ride through that. We'll just crash into that. That's no good. So if we go back to here and we select the wall, we can go into object settings. Now this brings up a few objects. So we're going to start with physics first. So if we turn on the physics now, this object now has physics attached to it. And to test what that will do when we start the game, we can hit this button here, and this is our test physics button. And as I've stacked it nicely, it just kind of wobbles there. We turn that off again. So if I had it at a slight angle and a bit higher up, when we tested it, you'd see it would fall over. So if we stack that vertically again and test it, there you go. And now we can go into gameplay and test it. There you have it. Boom. That wasn't very useful. I guess we'd have to rewind. There you go. And we can try wheeling into it. Get down. There you go. So that's the most basic physics we've got. Next thing I want to show you is the hinge. So this is like putting a pin through the object, and it will pin that on an axis to just open space. So if we play it now that I've moved it down a bit, if we test it, you see it rotates around that axis. If we move it a bit further, so now it's like a swinging door, or obstacle. Other things we can do with this as well is we've got the axis it's on, so that would rotate it round to different ones, but we'll keep it there for now. The other thing, once we've added a hinge, is we can add a motor. So if we go into test mode now, it will be a spinning thing, and you can change the speed of that using this slider, and you can also swap the direction entirely. So that's the motor. Now one of the other options you have with the hinge is you can just rotate it slightly. Is you can add if we take the motor off, we can add a spring. The spring's a bit different. It's a bit tricky to get the hang of, but it can be quite cool in some scenarios. So if we test it now, you see it kind of holds its position. But if we then go and ride the bike onto it, you can see it kind of springs down. So this can be useful for some things. So that's the main physics side of things. The great thing about physics, though, is you can also use it with groups. So say I have this. Let's just make something real random. Big. I don't know what that is. 3 planks, and then we select them all together. We group them. So this is now one object. Now if we go into the object options, we can attach physics to that. If we move that, and then we hit test, you see this acts as just one big object. They're not, and physics applies to the whole thing. So you can make really cool stuff with this. Now the other thing you can make, the one thing I did miss out with the physics is, say we have this box here, we add physics on, it would just fall down and be in the way. But the other thing we have is this button here. This is triggers. So normally any physics or what we're going to show you in a minute, movement system will get set off when you go through the trigger, but if it doesn't have a trigger, it will get set off when you go through the previous checkpoint. So when it's the start line, it gets triggered just as soon as you start, but if it was to be behind this checkpoint, say, we'll put another checkpoint in, shall we? So we had a checkpoint here. Okay, so this yellow box, this is the trigger. And now this box won't start, it won't do that full until the bike rider passes through the trigger. So we put it like that. And now we can also, if we duplicate that, so we've got another falling box. But this one we're gonna get rid of the trigger. Now this box won't fall in that it's not got a trigger. It won't fall until the bike rider passes the checkpoint, as that's the checkpoint, and it's the first checkpoint to its left. So you've got to be a bit careful when you've got multiple levels going on. So let's demo this. So you see the box hasn't fallen yet, but as soon as I drive through here, there's the box. And it hasn't fallen yet, and as soon as I go through the checkpoint, there's the box. Now if I was to reset back, if I was to crash and go back to that checkpoint, the box would fall immediately because I've triggered that checkpoint now. So that's triggers. Let's delete these boxes now. Now the next thing I want to talk about is the movement system. So we have this metal girder, and we go into our object settings over here again, and we select movement. So you can see it's created a trigger, and it's also got this green and red box. Now what these indicate are the start and the end position. So right now it just go up slightly. So when you click on the red box, it moves the object to it. So now we can be like, oh, I want this to go quite high up. So we've got another one in the way that we're trying to get over. And if we go back to this one, so this is just going to help us get over that. So now I want to demo how this moves, so we can hit the test button there, and we can see what movement that will do. If we click back on the green, we can see the trigger again. So we don't want that to start moving until the rider's right onto it, so we'll move the trigger back a bit. So now let's test this. Now remember, we've got the skip button, so we'll skip to that checkpoint and get up onto that, and there you go, it's moving along because we've hit the trigger, and it'll stop at the end and we can make it over. Let's go back to here and show you some of the other stuff you can do with this. I'm just going to rotate this down a bit. If you move the start position, it does also move the end position, so you might just have to readjust that. So one of the other things you can do, so you can change how long it takes to do the movement. So this is in seconds. So right now it took 2 seconds, but if we change it to 9, you can see it's much slower. And if we change it to 0.1, it's really fast. So you've got to be a bit careful because it does accelerate instantly. If the rider's on it and it accelerates too fast, it will be a bit weird. So just be careful with that. But we'll put it to 2 again. We'll do 1 for now while I show you the other few things. So these buttons down here are loops. So this one is just a loop. So if this is on, it will teleport back to the start point when it hits the end and just keep looping. If this one's on, we call this ping pong, and it will go from the start to the end and then the end to the start. So if I demonstrate that. Now the new slider that's appeared is the start position, and this means you can have it start 50% through its transition. So when we hit play, it will start from the middle there now. Okay, so if we I'll just make this a bit slow again, and if we test that again, where you can see it goes up and then it will go back. But the rider obviously will carry on with its momentum as the acceleration is instant there. Okay, so a few smaller bits I want to talk about. Just that's the majority of it. We've got a zoom slider down here. You can also zoom by using pinch. The other thing is we do have some bigger objects here. Now we call these are more like environmental objects. And when you try and drag these out, you'll get automatically switched to the other camera because it's just much easier to use. So this is one of our big canyons, and you see as you place this, it removes the floor and you get a canyon. So this is good. So these big objects, you can't actually select them when you're in this camera, not the normal camera. It won't let you select them. So to move these, you have to be in the big camera. Now, occasionally you will be wanting to work in this camera and not selecting these huge objects. So for that, we've added these little lock icons up here. So you can lock out this big object, and now even when I'm in this camera mode, I can't select it. if you did need to select it again, you can hit this unlock all button, and this will unlock any object you've locked like this, or it will unlock all the objects you've locked like this, and then you'll have to lock them all again individually. But it's useful for big background pieces that you don't want to be accidentally moving. So the last thing I quickly want to talk about is the level settings button. So you can click on that here. You get a randomly generated name when you first create your level, which you can change by just selecting it. Call this one tutorial. And the other things you can change here is your themes, so you can set it to snow or desert or grass. That's snow, that's a bit of fun. And then you also can set the requirements for gold, silver and bronze. It won't let you set the time until you've actually set a best time. This isn't really useful just yet, as there's no way to share the levels, but we will be putting in an online level system shortly after release. So if we go back to build mode, now you can see it's in snow. And one of the last button we haven't really talked about is this little camera button up here, and now this creates your little icon. So if you just click that, now we've selected this as our icon, and if you go back into the level select, you can now see that's the picture we just took. So I think that's everything. If you have any questions about the level editor, please drop me a message or a comment on this video, and I look forward to seeing what you guys come up with. Cheers.